I've been coming to London Blockchain Week for the last 3 years, and it's wonderful to see the event absolutely blossoming in diversity, the number of companies, the number of different industries we're seeing. And that's absolutely what we're here to discuss today. So I've worked across 14 different industries, implementing POCs, pilots, and products in the blockchain space. But these guys really go to the next level. We've got amazing sectoral expertise here, everything from interstellar space travel all the way to humanitarian aid. So I'd like to pass over to my fabulous panel to briefly introduce themselves and then also give a quick understanding as to how they got involved and why they got involved in blockchain outside of financial services. So, Alexander, would you like to start?
Good morning. My name is Alexander Vavarenko. I'm a founder of Shipping Group with offices in Dubai, Hamburg, Odessa in Ukraine, and Paris. And I'm also a CEO and founder of ShipNext, which is the first digital automated shipping online marketplace, which uses the blockchain technology for well, basically the shipping and transport sector. For me, this process was the next step forward. I have let's say, a background of a software developer before I joined shipping 19 years ago, or even more. Basically, as a CEO, it's quite unique that I myself teach the system every day for the last 2 years to automate all these processes. Now we are in the integration of a part of our clients in it, and well, basically, I see this as the next step of development in my company, because this is now the main drive for the industry.
Thanks. Cecile, could you?
Hello. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Cecile. But I run a marketing agency for blockchain startups with my co-founder over there. I've been in the space for 5 years. So I've been actually marketing first in the Bitcoin space, then it became blockchain, then it became private blockchains, and I've got ICOs. So we help blockchain startups to launch within the community or the general public if needed. And we help them raise also a shitload of money through our crypto trading connections. And I also on the side run an organization called blockchainforgood.com, also known as BC4G. And we're a think tank which was founded a couple of years ago, where we bring together all the greatest minds in blockchain to think about how we can move this for the better of society. And since it's become a massive movement, you'll get Blockchain for Good meetups and panels everywhere. So that's been very fun, and it's not for profit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brianna Fay. I'm actually coming here from New York. I've been in Manchester all week, so it's nice to see you all here with your amazing accents. I'm lead experience design of R-Loop. R-Loop is an organization that focuses on developing hardware technology for the Hyperloop. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Hyperloop. It's the futuristic transportation system. I definitely recommend Googling it because it might be happening. Basically somewhere in between a train, like a maglev train, and a plane, because it's complete levitation. So basically, our team is a distributed global team composed of about 1,200 contributors. We're globally distributed and totally remote. We've been working for about 3 years, and we started from an original call from SpaceX, Elon Musk competition to design and develop tech for the Hyperloop. So fast forward 3 years, we've kind of developed, and now, again, we're over 1,200 worldwide. We kind of operate in this unique sort of future of work style where people come in and contribute when they want, how they want, and we have engineers from all different kind of fields and expertises. We have people from NASA and Facebook, MIT, and they kind of come in to contribute to the kind of prototypes that we've developed. And so since we are this sort of distributed kind of new way of working team, we basically wanted to create a system that allowed blockchain technology to already enhance our decentralized way of working and distributed way of working. So we've kind of developed the system that we're currently like packaging as a future of work processes in terms of creating this body of expertise within this organization that allows people to kind of pursue passion projects. But yeah, the Hyperloop is our first focus, and we predominantly are an infrastructure hardware team.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Charles Carter from Transport Systems Catapult. The Catapults are government-funded technology and innovation centres, and our mission is to make the UK a leader in intelligent mobility. I'm a senior technologist there, and I've been leading a project over the last 6 months investigating applications of blockchain in transport, along with the likes of University of Sheffield, BT, Open Data Institute, and I think it's really interesting the fact that transport is in effect the transfer of an asset, be it a passenger or a particular item or consignment, which lends itself very well to blockchain technology. But the other use cases that are coming out of the woodwork are really fascinating and potentially not to do with asset transfer at all, but focusing on the consensus-based qualities of blockchain technology.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, all. I should note that given, in light of the fact that this is a non-financial services panel, there is a prize to whoever can resist saying the words ICO or token sale the longest. So bear that in mind. Right, to kick us off, so obviously we've got a split between people representing their own organisations and those who represent a multitude of different other companies. So Cecile and Charles, it'd be great to hear from your perspective. What are some of the good use cases that you've seen in the companies you work with that really exemplify the value of utilising blockchain outside of financial services?
Yeah, so we've been looking at blockchain use cases across mobility as a service, freight and logistics, collaborative digital transport engineering, data sharing, etc. So some of the really interesting ones that I point out, looking at sharing transport data, organisations tend to keep it to themselves, don't exploit it in the way that they should do, don't share it. And something that could enable companies to share that data around and exploit the value better for society and also for their own business models is the use of a blockchain-based data passport that we are exploring at the moment, something that tracks a data set through different organisations when they do changes to it, or they could do some cleaning, they could do some reformatting, they could fuse it with other data sets. All of that can be or could be recorded on a blockchain that moves along with a particular data set to ensure that when a company down the data supply chain picks up a data set, they know who's done what with it and when and what's the reliability of that particular data set. So that's a really interesting example. Another one being autonomous drones and the unmanned traffic management system that we're going to need for flying taxis and freight deliveries. And using the immutability and provenance and consensus that you can extract with blockchain technology to do things like record the history of a particular drone, the ownership, the software updates, maintenance updates, so that it's visible to regulators, to other members within that stakeholder community. And things like geofencing, so where a drone is allowed to operate at a particular point in time, synchronizing that data across multiple stakeholders within a drone system, using blockchain for that with a single version of the truth is also an interesting use case. There's so many coming out. It's a really exciting time.
Wow. So obviously I'm going to talk about actually the startups I do work with that are non-financial, but actually they are financial in some way. I think many of the ideas coming out have a financial aspect to them. It is the internet of value, and that value is financial, but not as we know it. And I think it also means it doesn't really engage with the financial industry. So some of the startups that we work with that are interesting, that we're pitching last night at our or Mayfair Blockchain Club, was one called Rouge. It's a protocol, and they help solve the problem of when you're trying to use coupons online, you'll often get this coupon is no longer valid, and also you get a lot of fake coupons. So actually, all the features of blockchain help you resolve this small little problem with digital coupons. And it's actually potentially can be in 6 months' time. I see this actually being a real-world application that we can actually use. And the coupon industry is actually like a multi-billion-dollar industry. So it's a beautiful, nice, simple, realistic idea that will grow into a bigger marketing solution for large organizations, for anybody. Then also we've got Hip.property. They work in real estate. So they're looking at making it easier for first-time buyers to get onto the property ladder, which is great, and also help you unlock the equity in your house. So it's quite complicated, but the founder CEO is very into this topic, very knowledgeable, wild, strong, and they're doing an ICO. I said it. Sorry. Yeah. They're doing an ICO, I'm afraid. Yes. And anyway, they're very interesting, and people love this idea because actually they're trying to really disrupt the entire real estate industry. And then we got the loyalty program as well. That's quite interesting. But yeah, these are very human, down-to-earth ideas.
Fantastic, yeah. Really interesting use cases. I think both IoT and then online digital assets really hotting up as different use cases nowadays. So, Alexander and Charles, so in both shipping and transport, we've seen increased industry-led interest in blockchain technology over the last couple of years. How truly successful would you say this sector-led approach has been, and equally, how can they look to improve this in the coming years?
I can start. Well, shipping is in fact one of the oldest, or say transport is one of the oldest industries, and in fact it has not seen so much change. And only recently there were talks about putting everything in databases, interconnected databases, blockchain, and this process, in fact, indeed moving quite slow. Partly because shipping is part of it. It's a very international business. It includes, you cannot lock it in one country and not consider the other country as being part of it, which of course then includes international business, different languages, different companies. Corruption is one of it. Shipping is also a lot about gray registrations, offshore companies. And this is one of the bigger problems of putting it on blockchain or automation or making it transparent. But it is moving because shipping is also part of the whole, chain, or let's say blockchain, in moving a commodity from production or from the crop to our tables. And so it cannot live on its own. And this is why, and this is a good news for me, this is why no matter how much corrupt it is or intransparent or conservative, it cannot live on its own without keeping pace with the whole progress.
In sort of transport sector itself, we're seeing effectively demonstrators at this stage of blockchain technology led by industry, mainly in the freight logistics sphere. And really we need now these other use cases and other areas to be demonstrated as well. Let's see what the value is. But I think in the UK, we've had government also pushing hard on blockchain. Government Office for Science came up with a report back in 2015, which talked about blockchain technologies, distributed ledgers beyond financial services. So in that regard, potentially they're actually, government were ahead of the game in this area. And now we're seeing activity, like I said, in freight logistics. But I do think that we need some collaborative R&D investment through Innovate UK and the like to help explore these use cases and bring organisations that might be wedded to a particular way of working in the transport industry along with them, and that would really help to stimulate projects moving forward.
Fantastic, thank you.
I would just like to add, that still, I'm sure even in this room, a lot of people link blockchain to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, and that's one of the problems, and shipping and transport is as a part of it. When you talk about blockchain, a lot of people think, oh, okay, he's talking about Bitcoin again or ICO, and that's probably why blockchain has not impacted on many industries still.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely critical point. Differentiating between blockchain use cases outside of cryptocurrency, even separate from financial services, is a big issue for a lot of people in the market. Actually, on that note, Brianna and Cecile, it'd be great to hear, because market adoption is something which we're seeing a lot of organizations having difficulties with, because there is a misunderstanding, there are educational gaps, and everything from the interpretation of the data and systems design, like we were discussing previously, Brianna, to actually engaging the right people and selling to the right people and helping them understand the value. There's still a real dearth between today and where we need to be. So where do you see the real pain points currently, and how do you think we can go about addressing those and rectifying that situation?
Sure. So I think in the kind of initial, 1 to 3 years, one of the huge things is this educational barrier. I think people tend to be really intimidated when they hear about blockchain. And again, there's this sort of misunderstanding between what is blockchain, what is altcoins, what is cryptocurrency, how is money like this, and also how do you even conceptualize applying it to things that are no longer technically solely digital. So when you talk about Arloop, we're a hardware and engineering company first and foremost, and when we start talking to people about how we are incorporating blockchain technology, it just sort of goes over the head, and it becomes sometimes lost because it's hard to understand how physical applications can be connected and from the blockchain. So I think that's the sort of educational aspect of it, and as a designer, I think there's a huge lack of design currently in the blockchain space. So you'll see a ton of platforms, a ton of companies talking about how they're using blockchain, but not really a great visual description of that. And I think visuals are what is going to be able to communicate and describe what blockchain is to the broader, wider general audience, that aren't heavy tech experts. And when you're talking about marketing, you probably deal with this a lot. So I think down the later road, we were discussing this before, but I think actually blockchain technology is something that will ultimately become invisible. So there'll be this, maybe in the next 5 years, we talk about it a lot, and the general audience talks about it a lot, and consumers might kind of know what it is more, but ultimately, 5 years out, it will kind of become embedded. Similar in the way that, the electric motor, you don't really look at it, you don't see it, but it's in almost everything we, communicate with as a physical object on a daily basis. So in the same way that IoT has like embedded sensing, but you don't see it because it's covered up with this pretty, white or gray, cloth design. So it's going to be similar in the way that blockchain tech is sort of embedded and invisible to, the general public.
So on the topic of market adoption, well, it's much easier now than 5 years ago because probably all of you, as well over Christmas, everyone's talking about Bitcoin, and your friends and parents and grandparents even talk about Bitcoin. So that really helps, and they no longer think it's associated to the Silk Road. Phew. I don't know who they thought I was for the last 5 years. I'm surprised I actually have friends outside of blockchain. Because, yes, so it's no longer to do with Silk Road. It's something, yes, like my dad said to me the other day, actually it's about this thing under Bitcoin. It's actually about blockchain, which I wanted to know, what do you think I've been doing all these years? Oh my God. So anyway, so they do know there's a blockchain thing, there's a Bitcoin thing, and there's loads of articles now. Everyone is writing about it, and great news sources, such as the New York Times. So there's loads of resources. So we can't really spoon feed people to be educated. In life, you got to go out there and make that move and teach yourself. Knowledge is power, etc., etc. So there's that, and it's out there. And so you just have to have that willingness, because if they haven't noticed now that there's a great opportunity in this space, then what can we do about that? Then when I have startups where we're working with and we're trying to then market for them, so they have an audience and community, I do have to stay within the blockchain community because those are the early adopters. The general public won't really be the users. It's also because the user experience will be a bit tricky and all that. So about that, yes. And within that, you have these key values that blockchain is all about. You have to resonate in the fact that blockchain is about decentralization. They love the concept of transparency. We don't mean glass, we mean more like opacity when we're sources talking about transparency. They love the aspect about data and identity. And so you have to build products to resonate with those ideas. And if you're not, then why are you actually even engaging with blockchain? I'd probably even say there's probably a better technology out there for solutions such as supply chain, if they're more B2B, in the market adoption. In that case, I think there it's that will come once the technology is ready and you've proved that, and you've got all your stakeholders involved, and it's a kind of different kind of game. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Fabulous. Yeah, I walked into a conversation the other day where people were comparing how well their grandmothers had done in crypto trading. So we've come a long way. So Alexander, you've had a really interesting couple of years actually implementing this technology into the commodities trading market. So regulation and technology are often cited as big issues in implementing into an already existing ecosystem, but it sounds like the implementation aspects and the cultural aspects were equally as difficult. So where would you say were the most trying areas?
Well, I'll start with our experience. I mean, 2 years ago, I was trying to first start with this project, and my day was and still is basically receiving about 10,000 or more emails a day. All me and my colleagues would look at it. It's all written in different formats, sometimes different languages, in different forms. And in shipping and transport, there's even a shorter version of English. If anything you can write, you can sometimes write in just 2 letters or 1 letter. So it's a different language as a whole. So our task first was to use natural language processing, neutral language processing, and machine learning to try to standardize the whole information flow, which was something we achieved first. So that was basically standardizing all the databases, all the information flow into standard, into one standard. And then we used all those databases to interact between them and make calculations, make evaluations and processing of all the data flow. And that led to a new stage. So eventually now we are at the smart contracts phase where we automate the freight offerings, the trade, and as from the smart contract, we are again moving into the further blockchain of interaction between different ports, organizations, controlling authorities in exchange of documents. Now that is another issue because every country has its own rules, regulations, standards. They're not up to one standard. That's one of the problems. And here I just want to point out that there were a lot of attempts made to automate this process down to the most painful when DHL spent $300 million building their own internal system for that, and they failed. And now there's some managers from DHL are trying to go onto ICO over on the other side of this ocean, trying to sell the idea of building yet another system for ICO, for blockchain. So I mean, the problem here is that a lot of people who tried, they've never built something outside this on their own. They've never built a company. They've never built a process which they can then segregate into smaller processes and automate them and make them into one system. And a CEO of a company would never sit and build it once again from scratch. And the second problem is that corruption. In every blockchain ecosystem, there must be players from different industries. There must be a producer as well as probably a trader dedicating to it, ports, authorities, you name it, suppliers, shipping companies, transport companies, trucking companies, warehouses, and all of them, they should understand the process. And you know, when it comes to me going to another client, luckily now we have companies like Koch Fertilizers, Trafigura, Cargill, Louis Dreyfus, who understand the need. But before it was like, okay, me going to a bank or to a company, and they would understand I'm from the shipping sector, so they would link me up to their traffic manager. And then why would the traffic manager build or help build something that would substitute his work? So the main problem is, let's say, bypassing this corrupt segment in every country, trying to knock on the CEO's door to bring his attention, to make him understand the process, and then implement it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both of those are really critical points, both that standardization piece and integration piece, and yeah, cutting out the middle managers and getting to the decision makers who are going to benefit from those end results. Really interesting stuff. Okay, so last question, Brianna and Charles. We've very much spoken about the private sector up until this point, but both of you expressed interest in that integration between private and public sector. So as somebody who's gone through the very painful procurement processes before, where would you say the educational, cultural and logistical barriers are and the opportunities sit for operation between the two?
Yes, so as the panel's mentioned previously, education is a big issue for blockchain. Things like IoT, AI are more easy to understand the value to people, decision makers in government and in industry. You know, I think one of the interesting paradigms here with government and certainly in the transport sector is how transport services are going to be provided in the future, and what say will government have over that if potentially it continues on with a similar, you know, centrally controlled hierarchical platform model with the likes of Amazon providing you know, transport services from A to B. And you know, blockchain really has the opportunity there to decentralize that relationship and make it far more open, so everyone can take part in the transport ecosystem and provide services. And I think that's a really big interplay where government are very interested in how that's going to turn out. And it's not just for transport, it's in every area of the economy. Are we going to see in the next 10, 15 years the platform business model, centrally controlled, fall down because of lack of innovation, you know, abuse of power, that sort of thing. So that's a really interesting area, and yeah, something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think not just in transportation sector, but all around, there's this kind of, in the public sector notion, you talk about individuals a lot and identity a lot. So it's different from a kind of B2B scenario where you're kind of dealing this contractual agreement. But when you talk about identity, it's a very, there's a huge privacy concern. And so I think that's a huge leap that people have to, one, conceptualize and understand before they feel okay with opting into that. And there's huge benefits to this sort of globalized, you know, decentralized notion of everybody's on the same page and it's easy to translate and share information, but you give up a lot. And I think, you know, a lot of the things that is going around the internet right now is kind of setting the foundation for that. But I think when people don't understand it, there's that lack of education and kind of like overbearing nature of technology they can't wrap their minds around. They're less apt to agree to even want to be part of it. And then, of course, systems have a harder time buying it and adopting it. But yeah, I think it's a huge testing bed right now, and it's a huge opportunity for, you know, discovery in terms of what are people okay with, and how do we make this you know, less overbearing than it tends to be and more approachable as a technology to utilize.
Right.
I just wanted to add, I mean, hello? You do speak about governments, but you have to also keep in mind that governments are today rely on taxpayers. I mean, taxpayers can be in the form of human beings or companies. Today, companies to survive must become more efficient. And blockchain, as one of the ways of doing that, is making them more efficient and fast in delivering goods from production to the final consumer. And that the governments understand. I mean, today to stop the blockchain process or to stop automation is putting more pressure on your economics and making life still more expensive for the final consumer. So the final goal is, for the governments, is to actually to help the process in becoming more competitive inside, to make life more livable or better or more convenient for the people living in that community.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're very fortunate in the UK to have an open dialogue with both the government and the regulators, so it's up to us as an industry to harness that. So yeah, we've had some really interesting outcomes of that. So very much education needs to be a focus for us, ensuring that the people we're talking to understand the technology and know how to implement it. Equally, everything from UI, UX and design to illustrating that in a clear and illustrative way. Equally ensuring that we're communicating with the right people, the decision makers, and that they have that correct sectoral expertise. And but it would be great to hear from each of you.
Time, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, in that case, I've had to do the summary for you, I'm afraid. But can I please get a huge round of applause for this fantastic panel? Absolutely brilliant.